Can anyone truly replace a legend, or is that question already setting the next actor up to fail? The moment Jamie Dornan was even mentioned in the same breath as Aragorn, the internet didn't just react, it erupted. This wasn't just another casting rumor, it felt like a challenge to something deeply rooted in cinematic history. Because for many fans, Aragorn isn't just a character, it's a legacy shaped by one unforgettable performance. That legacy, of course, belongs to Viggo Mortensen, whose portrayal in The Lord of the Rings has become almost untouchable. His version of Aragorn defined strength, leadership, and quiet intensity in a way that felt both mythical and deeply human. Over time, that interpretation became the standard, not just for the character, but for how audiences imagine him. So when a new name enters the conversation, it doesn't feel like a replacement, it feels like a disruption. And that's exactly why Dornan's name has caused such a divide. On the surface, he doesn't seem like the obvious choice. Known for more restrained, internal performances, he brings a different kind of presence, one that relies less on physical dominance and more on subtle emotional shifts. For fans expecting the same rugged authority that defined Aragorn before, that difference feels like a risk, even before a single scene has been imagined. But as the discussion deepens, that initial skepticism starts to evolve into something more complicated. Because when you look beyond surface expectations, Dornan's strengths begin to align with aspects of Aragorn that are often overlooked. This is a character who carries doubt, who wrestles with identity, and who spends much of his journey avoiding the very role he is destined to fulfill. It's not just about strength, it's about hesitation, vulnerability, and the weight of responsibility. That's where the conversation becomes more interesting. Because the question shifts from, can you replace Viggo Mortensen, to something far less straightforward, does Aragorn need to be the same at all? If the character is approached from a different angle, one that emphasizes his internal conflict rather than his external presence, then Dornan's style might not be a limitation. It might be the very thing that makes the performance feel new. Still, the resistance is strong, and it's not without reason. For many fans, the connection to Aragorn is deeply emotional, tied not just to the character, but to the experience of watching those films for the first time. Changing that image feels like altering a memory, something personal rather than purely cinematic. And in that context, even the idea of a different interpretation can feel like a threat rather than an opportunity. As rumors continue to circulate, their origin remains unclear, adding another layer of uncertainty to the situation. There's no official confirmation, no concrete evidence, just a growing wave of speculation that refuses to settle. Some point to industry whispers, others to the way casting trends are shifting toward unexpected choices. But without a definitive source, the debate exists in a strange space between possibility and imagination. And yet, that uncertainty is exactly what keeps the conversation alive. Because as long as nothing is confirmed, everything is possible. Fans can project their expectations, their fears, and their hopes onto the idea without having to confront a final decision. In a way, the rumor itself becomes more powerful than the reality could ever be. What's undeniable, however, is the intensity of the reaction. This isn't casual interest, it's emotional investment, the kind that only happens when a character means more than just a role. Dornan's name has become a focal point for a much larger discussion about legacy, change, and the risks of reimagining something that already feels complete. Because at its core, this isn't just about casting, it's about identity. About whether a character like Aragorn can evolve without losing what made him iconic in the first place. And whether audiences are willing to accept that evolution, even if it looks nothing like what they remember. So as the debate continues to grow, one question refuses to fade. Not whether Jamie Dornan can replace Viggo Mortensen, but whether anyone ever truly could, or if the real challenge lies in redefining what Aragorn is allowed to be. As the debate refuses to settle, something unexpected begins to happen. The conversation shifts from rejection to reconsideration. What started as a wave of skepticism slowly transforms into a deeper analysis of what Jamie Dornan could actually bring to a role like Aragorn. Not everyone is convinced, but the tone begins to change, moving away from immediate dismissal toward a more complex question. what if this version of Aragorn isn't meant to replace anything at all? Because the truth is, Aragorn has never been just one thing. Beneath the image of the warrior king lies a character defined by hesitation, self-doubt, and an almost reluctant acceptance of destiny. Viggo Mortensen captured those elements in a way that felt powerful yet grounded, but that doesn't mean they can't be explored differently. And this is where Dornan's potential begins to take shape, not as a replacement, but as a reinterpretation that leans more heavily into the internal struggle rather than the external myth. In many ways, Dornan's acting style is built for that kind of approach. His performances often rely on subtlety, on what isn't said rather than what is, creating tension through restraint instead of force. Applied to Aragorn, that could shift the focus of the character, emphasizing the burden of leadership rather than its authority. Instead of a figure who commands through presence alone, this version might feel more human, more conflicted, and perhaps more relatable in ways that haven't been fully explored before. Of course, that kind of shift comes with its own risks. Audiences who expect a certain level of grandeur, of heroic certainty, may find a more introspective Aragorn unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. The balance between honoring the character's legacy and introducing something new is incredibly delicate, and leaning too far in either direction could alienate parts of the audience. That's the challenge of stepping into a role that carries so much weight. Every choice becomes amplified, every difference scrutinized. At the same time, there's a growing recognition that storytelling itself is evolving. Modern audiences are increasingly drawn to characters who feel layered, imperfect, and emotionally complex. The idea of a flawless hero is no longer as compelling as it once was, replaced by a desire for authenticity and depth. In that context, Dornan's approach doesn't feel out of place, it feels aligned with a broader shift in how stories are told and experienced. But then comes the twist that complicates everything. What if none of this is real? What if the entire conversation is built on a rumor that was never meant to carry this much weight? There is still no official confirmation, no announcement that places Dornan in contention for the role. And yet, the discussion has taken on a life of its own, shaping perceptions and expectations as if the casting were already decided. This raises an important question about the nature of these rumors themselves. Are they simply reflections of fan imagination, or do they reveal something deeper about what audiences are ready, or not ready, to accept? The fact that Dornan's name could generate this level of reaction suggests that the idea of change is both feared and desired at the same time. People resist it, yet they can't stop engaging with it. And perhaps that's where the true significance of this moment lies. Not in whether Dornan will actually play Aragorn, but in what the reaction to that possibility reveals. It exposes the tension between tradition and reinvention, between holding on to what is familiar and exploring what could be different. It shows how deeply audiences connect with certain characters, and how difficult it is to imagine them existing outside of the versions that first defined them. As the conversation continues, it becomes clear that there may never be a simple answer. Some will always prefer the original, seeing it as definitive and untouchable. Others will remain open to reinterpretation, willing to see where a new approach might lead. And in between those perspectives lies a space where both can exist, where legacy and evolution don't have to cancel each other out. In the end, the question isn't just whether Jamie Dornan is the right choice. It's whether the idea of a right choice even applies to a character like Aragorn. Because once a story reaches a certain level of cultural significance, it stops belonging to a single interpretation. It becomes something that can be revisited, reimagined, and, inevitably, debated. And maybe that's why this rumor refuses to fade. Not because it's been confirmed, but because it challenges something fundamental. It forces people to confront what they truly value in a character, whether it's the familiarity of what they already know, or the possibility of discovering something new.